Okay, so we're going to start out with how did you get started in PTA?
My beginnings in PTA really were when I observed my parents being involved in PTA. PTA was a part of our life. My parents went to PTA meetings. They were involved in PTA activities. I saw PTA publications at my house. So I became familiar with PTA at a really young age. But my involvement in PTA and as a member was really the first membership I bought was as a teacher. Because I knew the importance of connecting parents and teachers in order to help children do well in school. But my true involvement in my path up to leadership began when my oldest children because they're twins, entered kindergarten. And like most parents, as I walked up to the kindergarten door, next to the door was the membership table, and I signed up to be a member. And it wasn't long before I was president of the PTA. I was president of the Pleasant Lane PTA in Lombard first. And a year later, I went to my first state convention in Illinois, and I was hooked. And I continued to work at various levels within my community and my district. I moved into state leadership. And then in 1988, I went to my first national convention in Atlanta, and I was hooked again. And I haven't missed a national convention since then, and enjoyed my path of PTA leadership since that first convention. When I first got involved as a PTA leader, life was very different. That was nearly 35 years ago at that time, and life was different. My family lived in a suburban Chicago area, and at that time, lots of moms were home. Kids came home for lunch. I was home after school. They walked to and from school, and they didn't even walk escorted. They walked with other children, and it was very free kind of environment for them. The kinds of things that parents were concerned about at that time were mainly safety issues, crossing guard issues, sidewalks to be available. They wanted to make sure that children were safe and healthy, and so a lot of health issues were also top of mind to parents at that time. PTAs were very active. There was still a little bit of trouble finding leadership that we hear about today, but there were more parents available because they had the time to devote. And quite honestly, moms were happy to get out of the house in the evening, so they didn't mind coming to a PTA meeting. Dads were involved, but they were mainly the heavy lifters. We called on dads to help us on those tasks where we needed a little muscle power now and then. And they usually were not in the forefront as leaders. We didn't have all the electronic communication. Our communication was all ink on paper. In fact, one of the positions on the board when I first joined was the mailings editor, who was responsible for sending out all the correspondence, because we didn't have electronic newsletters or email or texting or tweeting or anything. Everything had to be transmitted between telephones that were wired into the walls and to printed newsletters. So it was a different time for PTA, but a lot of the issues were the same. It's so difficult to identify one highlight in any term of office because there are a lot of things that we are engaged in. Probably one of the most memorable for me and for the organization was the relief efforts that we provided after Hurricane Katrina. We visited Mississippi, we visited Louisiana, we visited Texas, not only where the hurricanes occurred, but where children from those states went in order to be able to get back into school and to get back into their lives. So that was a huge piece, but there were also other things that we did. We continued to work on promoting parent involvement. We revised the national standards for parent-family involvement so they became measurable. And we had a couple of firsts. We had the first Take Your Families to School Week and the first ever Emerging Minority Leaders Conference in Detroit. One of the things that I remember most during my time as president, and again, very difficult to come up with the most, but I truly enjoyed the opportunity to travel the country to send and to bring the PTA message, to remind people of what our mission is, that we are interested in the welfare of children, that we promote parent education, parent involvement, and are advocates for our children. To be able to represent 6 million members was an awesome opportunity. As I traveled around the country, I also really enjoyed the chance to visit schools, to walk through classrooms, talk to children, talk to staff, talk to PTA members, to find out truly what is occurring and to take that message to Capitol Hill. I have two stories that really stand out in my mind, and they're both relatively short, so I'm not going to take a long time in sharing them. But in one of our trips to hurricane relief for Hurricane Katrina, we did a lot of following the trucks. We brought school supplies, we brought books. We took a lot of things to the schools to help them recover from their losses in the storm. And as we were traveling to schools, we walked into a first grade classroom and we took a stack of books in to help rebuild their classroom library. And as we were there visiting with the children, we let them know that we brought these to them because we care about them, we want to help things get better for them, and that we wanted to bring the message that people across the country care about them, and children in other parts of the country care about them too. And as I looked through this little group of first graders who were sitting in front of me, one of the little girls had big crocodile tears rolling down her cheeks. And it really did strike at the heartstrings. A few weeks later, I visited a school after Hurricane Rita. And this was in Port Charles, Texas. And as we were, or Port Arthur, Texas, I'm sorry. And as we were there, we talked to one of the principals about what it took to help rebuild their schools, and again, brought them assistance. And she said a line to me that I will never forget. And she said, Katrina showed us how to give. Rita showed us how to receive. And that really stuck with me, and it helped me relate to the opportunity of being a national PTA president. In this position, you give a lot. You give a lot of time, you give a lot of energy, you give a lot of yourself, and your family gives with that as well. But what we also find out is that we get a lot in return, and I'm really happy that I was able to not only give, but to receive as well.